off, haven't I?
Yeah, we can't start the programme because you just told me about the clip of Dan Janane. Janane? We think that's how you pronounce it? Janane. It's Australians. Have you seen this?
I have no idea what you're on about. Can I just ask before you go further, why have we got red squares all over our faces?
Oh, well, I'm going to... Wait.
Oh, it's a teaser.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Welcome to...
Podcast. Yeah, Newcastle.
All the things we can't talk about in Rugby League this week.
Tell you what, these biscuits are fantastic.
They are fantastic. Thanks, Phil Rogers, again. We still got some surprises.
Some.
4020 this week, brought to you by the brand new Rugby League computer game for the Atari 2600. Can't wait for that to come out. Just to point out, not an actual game, not actually real. Well, there you go. Got rid of that now. Took me hours of drama, hours to put that together. It's 4020 live, the podcast. It's the 10th of March. It's International Bagpipes Day.
Really?
I learned that by listening to Radio 3 because I'm cultured and middle class. It's just an act. It's just an act. I was watching England versus Italy. No, I wasn't watching England versus.
What, a bagpipes? Who won?
The posh people.
Did Newcastle win?
They nearly, again, threw it away.
Have you not seen that?
No.
Have you not seen it?
I
think we should show him.
Yeah, I mean, go on.
There's no watershed.
No, I mean, for our younger listeners, you watch Rugby League, so...
I'll apologise for anything you may have picked up over the microphone.
So it's the West Tigers versus Newcastle. So what's the context of this film?
It's this week's first round game.
Wow.
I mean,
which is exactly what we're going to do now.
Wow.
You don't get on the BBC, do you?
What's that, Fox?
Yeah.
Oh, well. Yeah, that sums it up,
something,
isn't it?
Yeah, you don't get Matt Newsom saying that, do you? Won't be doing that on... What the game of their show? Wigan Hull.
We could say on the verge of the RFL, it's up again.
So what's happening at the RFL today then?
Who's left?
Can we take over? Can we
it's
take
not Brian
over?
Barwick again with the Black Book, is it?
Can we take over? Can we be like the NRL? Can we put a bid into the NRL? Let us run Super League. It's 11 years of this podcast, and one of the greatest things that never happened. I was speaking to someone who used to work at Radio Yorkshire yesterday. There was a point where Bolton Wanderers were up for sale, and the apocryphal tale goes is we were trying to convince the owner of Radio Yorkshire to buy Bolton Wanderers
so that you could run it.
So we could just take over as a collective, not just RL and RY, but sadly, Uncle Ken realised that was probably a big waste of money, as opposed to a radio station, which was a vanity project. And look where we are now, 11 years later. So we didn't buy Bolton Wanderers, and the NRL are not going to let us run Super League. But who's left? Who governs the Rugby Football League? Who's in charge?
Well, that may change again by Wednesday.
Yeah, true.
What do we know? What do we know?
Lots of people have left.
Well,
various people
we know
in various roles.
Frank Slevin is going, but hasn't yet left.
He's the chairman of Rugby League Commercial.
Non-executive. But they've advertised for an executive full-time chair.
Who'll actually do...
Who, if rumours believed, would... people are expecting Nigel Wood to be...
No, he's the chairman of the Rugby League.
No, because Rugby League Commercial isn't the RFL.
No. Oh, okay.
So you could leave the RFL, but then go to Rugby League Commercial.
Well, who could do that? Yeah. Who could possibly leave the RFL
they work there, so.
Today and possibly work at RL Commercial at some future point? Who's trusted by the clubs, admired by the clubs? Who could that be? Is there anyone?
I was going to steal that Newcastle clip and put in the RFL just over and over again.
We know that Simon Johnson will either be leaving in the run-up to the meeting this week or at the end of the year. That's in negotiation at the moment. The jungle drums seem to say it could be this week. May even be before the meeting, because I think he feels again that he's being undermined a lot by those who wish to...
Shadowy forces in the background.
I'm not sure they're that shadowy. I think they've made themselves quite well known. But clearly the club... There's not enough money in the sport. There is a potential of some money to come into the sport through the NRL, because I think the word coming back from Vegas is it's a lot further down the line than the oh no, we need to wait to be asked kind of NRL attitude that was going into Vegas. So there's the opportunity of money coming in. The clubs want to control it. They don't want the RFL to control it. They I think have lost confidence in the people at the RFL to control it. So I expect blood on the walls at Wednesday's meeting.
So it has to be somebody that controls it that they respect.
Or
is it, can pull the strings off.
Or is it a holding position until they send their own person?
Yeah, interesting times, I think.
Sad, really, though, isn't it?
It is.
Because if we're talking about the product on the field, it's not been a bad month for Super League. The Championship looks fantastic. League One looks the most competitive we've seen it.
They've released the fixtures for the women's group stage of the Challenge Cup.
And there's enough talking points on the field.
That we don't need to talk
And
about.
we're talking about Salford. Have they been advanced money by the RFL, and who's sanctioned it if they have? And if it hasn't been agreed by the game in the round, who were asked about whether they should be advanced their money, then who's going to take responsibility for that? We're talking about the wrong things.
That's not to mention the open letter that's we've now seen on Twitter.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, again, that's interesting, isn't it? Because more than anything, and for those that haven't seen it yet or heard about it, a group purporting to be the women who work for the RFL and Rugby League commercial,
who are two separate bodies and not the same thing.
but they do work in the same ergonomic space, are supposedly, even though they're not named, are united in the fact that they don't want some of the people back in the sport who are being
Rumoured.
yes, or indeed perhaps jockeyed into position by certain people. So it doesn't name them, but it's clear from quite a long and very well written piece of prose that they don't want certain people back in the game, and they think that it would be damaging to women in the sport. Well, that again talks of a really divided workspace. That everybody
If it
looking
is
around
from them,
going,
and we don't know that,
Well,
that's
that's the
purporting
thing.
to be, isn't it? I suppose that's the difficulty when if a letter's not actually got names on it. To what extent can you substantiate what's written in it?
But then if you go into that workspace and you're looking at your colleague going, have you signed that? Is it me you don't want here? Is it?
Yeah.
It's not great, is it?
No.
Paul says, did Salford's owner pay their players, or is it right that the RFL advanced the money? Also, did the backroom staff get paid as they have bills to pay as well? I think that the point about the staff is very important because everyone was going, oh, look, the players have been played now. What about their hashtag, Salford's, is hashtag Together Stronger. So does that mean everyone at the club or just the players? I just want to...
The truth is we don't know.
We don't know. We don't.
The evidence would point to the fact that it wasn't the owner that paid them if it was just the players. That would hint at needing to get a game on rather than solving the crisis of who's in charge, and has the money come through. And
again, that some people wanted postponed, but not the coach of Castleford Tigers, apparently.
Well, again, that was mixed messages, wasn't it? Was the game going to be postponed? Was it not going to be
I suppose
postponed?
if you were going to
Did
be...
the owner know? Did the coach know? It's...
You probably thought they were more likely to beat Salford this time than another time, maybe. I mean,
But
let's not
people
let's
higher
not
up on the
pretend-
food chain at Castleford might not have thought that.
But I think they were more
Otherwise.
concerned about the fact that the crowd was being affected, that they weren't getting ticket sales because people were assuming that it might be another 82-0 if the game was played. Which again, if the RFL have paid Salford's wages but not told anybody and not told anybody why, there's a culpability issue there. I think if they'd come out and said, and I'm not saying this is the reason, but it could have been, if this fixture doesn't go ahead, we're in breach of our contract with Sky because we're obligated to put on 6 games a week. The cost of that, pro rata to our contract with Sky, would be more than the cost of paying the players' wages to ensure the game goes ahead. There's a rationale there, but if all you get is a wall of silence,
if the game's postponed, it's postponed. It doesn't mean it's cancelled, and they get the pick up the fixture at a future date. I don't know. It's the lack of. Well, I don't know. In my understanding, they've said no comment, haven't they?
Yeah.
So they've said they're not going to talk about it. as opposed to either a denial or an admission. I think what the game wants is probably transparency. I would guess what the clubs want is transparency.
Yeah, it just seems an administrative mess. And I feel sorry for some of the people at the RFL that you go to for comment who can't say anything, who are hamstrung by the fact that they're being told no comment, when I think they would like to be in a position where they could comment.
Mm-hmm. Imagine what would happen if the clubs who aren't Salford were asked to forego some of their TV money to keep Salford afloat in the future.
But
that would be
presumably the money they're getting is the money that they would have only be getting at some stage during the season anyway, so it's not actually affecting the clubs per se.
Yet. Depending on how long it goes on. And
well, if the club goes bust, for example,
and whether
that money goes down the Swanee.
But again, if the club goes bust and the fixtures go down as a result, Sky then claw back, as they did in COVID, a percentage of their contract. So
why haven't
it's a
they
really delicate situation.
Why haven't they sold a single player? This might be, as we're told, they were told to.
This is what I don't understand. The timeline doesn't add up. The timeline of being in special measures, you've got to sell players, you don't have to sell players. Not being in special measures because we've approved your owner. Oh, we haven't approved your owner because the money hasn't come in. You're back in special measures. It's like that roller coaster doesn't make sense.
No.
Somebody needs to.
And also, if they're
that.
told that they need to do it, they would have done it. I don't think they're necessarily being told, or even if they have, they've done. Then it's then clearly not being enforced, has it?
Well, I know of three Salford players, I think, who are first team, first choice players, who were on the verge of joining other clubs. So clearly there was demand for those players. There was an agreement in place for those players to be signed, whether that be dispensation on the original salary cap. They are certainly two, possibly 2.5 of the bigger earners there.
Because the precedent has been set on clubs having an exemption for this season if they sign players off.
So I think if they have been mandated to sell players, to pay the wages of the other players, that still could have happened. It's not ideal. You've got to feel for Paul Rowley, who presumably is one of the ones who hasn't been paid. And you look at the league table and it's clearly had an enormous effect on the Salford club. And I don't know then how they win back their fans or how their players...
Fans that were putting money into the coffers not that long ago.
Players who remain motivated to play in the knowledge that, you know, if it goes on too much longer, the chances of them having something to play for this season is a lot less. It's just a mess, and it hasn't. The problem is it hasn't been dealt with. And
the problem is still that they haven't got a large fan base of fans who are turning up, and that's not the fault of the fans who do turn up, as we say all the time about Huddersfield and whatever. But unless you've got more people coming through, unless you've got that interest,
which you might have had if you'd got new owners in who were serious about developing the facility and
it seems a shame the timing of it really, because they've seemed to have resolved the issue around the ownership of the ground and the lease scenario and all that, which was hamstringing them. So it does seem a shame really that it's got to this point.
It's a shame that it's got to this point a month into the season, because we've spent the first however many minutes, 4.5 hours, talking about anything other than what's going on the field.
Well, we will talk about what's going on in the field, honest. Phil says, will that mean another unnecessary payout if Simon Johnson goes?
No, I think
is he coming towards the end of his...
if he agrees to go. I mean, I think his term of office may well have been up at the end of the year anyway.
It's not going to be figures that were purported for other people who have left the RFL.
He's not a paid employee. No. He's only on the expenses of a...
He's a non-exec, isn't he?
Yeah, so I don't think there's a cost implication.
Tom's annoyed about how everyone says Tom Johnston now. Or John Stone even. Tom Johnstone. Paul says, get Gary Hetherington to run the RFL. At least it would sort it out, just as he did at Leeds back when they were going bust. Gary Hetherington. He's less divisive than other people. To some people.
News on that later this week.
Is it in the new 4020 magazine now?
I'm surprised that Gary's not got some involvement in what's going on with the clubs, given his influential position within the game.
It's put over Phil's head for the
rest. Trying to work out what that is on the front cover.
It's Bevan French.
Bevan French and Brian Brierley, is it?
Oh, what's the picture now? Put that back there. What else is on the comments? Toby says, good idea. Super League should separate from the RFL and get the CEO in to run the Super League. That's remember that? Remember, where's Robert Elson these days? What's he doing? What's he up to?
It's not about the personnel. I mean, clearly you want the right personnel. You want personnel that can bring people together rather than divide them. It's actually about the amount of money you've got to spend as a governing body, what you can spend it on, and what personnel you can get for the money that you're prepared to pay. So the issue isn't really about now, it's about if the NRL are coming in and financing things, what are they paying for? What expertise are they bringing? How do they safeguard the money that they're prepared to invest in this competition? Because at the moment you'd look at it from afar and go, bit of a basket case, probably not going to, unless
you
I could put my guys in.
Invest. Yeah.
You want to invest because you've got the genesis of something here that's worth investing in, both from the international game and some of the young players that are playing over here at the moment, and the standards of the product, of which, when we do get round to talking about games like Hull KR and Saints and Holland League, you've got something that is immensely marketable. So I can see why they would want to come in. They want to bring the opening game of the season or the state of origin over here, but they're going to have people in place that can look after their investment, because the way it looks at the moment, you would not invest in the...
And that's it. You don't get investment for nothing in return.
No,
so
absolutely.
you have to then
you don't just go, here's a bucket of money,
what does the NRL take? So they take some of the cream of the crop for the youngsters. They take some of the TV revenue that they hopefully can... But if you get if the pie becomes bigger... Well, in terms of that revenue share that the club gets, then that's great.
Or do you set up the type of commission that they've got in the NRL, where the clubs are guaranteed a much larger share of money, but not voting rights? They're partners in a commission, but they don't have overall control of it.
The money's got to come from somewhere, though, hasn't it, to get them...
That's because Peter V'landys is the nearest we've got to a benevolent dictator, so he's not going to, or his commission is not going to put a load of money into here if we're going to behave like 30 odd clubs sat round a table fighting over the crust of a pie.
Doesn't work and hasn't worked since 1895. But
so is all that's happening at the moment raising the ground for this new edifice to be built that is going to have NRL expertise and money behind?
The only concern I would have is, well, that's the top end of the game. What happens to the rest of the game?
And that is the issue.
Championship, League One, women's game, whatever it is.
Well, there might have to be, in the first instance, sufficient money to trickle down, but it won't be finite. It won't be every year. It'll be like you've got 5 years, and after that you stand on your own 2 feet.
I feel like I should say trickle down economics doesn't work, because that's what people always say on the news. I don't know what it means. I didn't do economics.
I did, and I still don't know.
Andrew says, evening all, is it going to be Warrington's year, or is there more chance of the NRL taking over Super League? To which Kevin has also said, I don't understand this NRL money. What are the NRL going to want for them to put their money in, and what's in it for them? I mean, here's the interesting thing, isn't it? Is when you look at the NRL table, and you've got St George Illawarra, West Tigers, Manly kind of Northern Eagles. What happens when Peter V'landys says he rings up not St Helens, because they would never measure them. He rings up Castleford, whoever runs Castleford these. They say, "Hello, Castleford. Yeah, we think we don't really need 2 teams in the Wakefield district." What do you mean? Like, you've got loads of teams in Sydney. Sydney's quite bigger than Wakefield. Bye. And then they have to play at the DIY Kitchen Stadium and call themselves Wakefield something.
I think we're looking to...
Am I scaremongering?
Yeah. I mean, what they're buying is
the
need to have a strong Northern Hemisphere rugby league, because I think we've said it before, they're not quite at saturation point, but there isn't a lot more they can do in the Southern Hemisphere Pacific region that they're not already doing. They're bringing a PNG team in, they're probably going to have a second team in New Zealand. New Zealand are making a bid to take a state of origin game there. They've almost done about as well as they can do. When you look at the figures that they've just announced for 2024, the turnovers are at a high, spectators are at a high, participation is at a high. First time ever they've had over 1 million people playing rugby league. It's a fantastic job that they've done. 4 years running that they've made huge profits. They've bought hotels. What they've done is cemented their place as arguably the number 1 sport. There'll be arguments from the AFL about they're bigger in certain areas, and that may be so. But what that then the NRL, ARLC have then got to say, right, well, what have we got that our competitors don't, that we can get further expansion and more ticket sales, more revenue, more shirt sales, more TV eyes on us, more betting revenue, whatever it might be. And they go, well, we've got to have games that we can take all around the world, so we've got to have strong places in the Northern Hemisphere we can take them. We've got to have an international game, and they've been absolutely clear that they want this Ashes test to come here to regenerate us, not because they're going to make money on it. The likelihood is they're going to slightly lose money on it, but they're not bothered because an Ashes test here puts the game here on a sounder footing in terms of eyes on it. They want to sell shirts. They want to appeal to global sponsors. They can't do any of that unless we're strong. And in a way, it goes back to the formation of Super League, which started as a war between two broadcast magnates in Australia. But one of them decided the way we can win this is to sign up over here. You know, we weren't part of that dream. You know, we had, you know, there was talk of a commission that said we should move to summer, but it wasn't really on the table. We were slowly in our latest phase of losing money, and then they came along with the golden wheelbarrow. But what they wanted was they wanted to sign up this side of the world so that they'd win the battle over there. It's a little bit like that. So I can see what they would want out of it. I could see why. I think they're genuine, and I think they can see that some of the best players in the world, they'd like playing in their competition.
I think,
and we might have some of them.
I think there's appetite in the clubs clearly for change
and money. Because all of the top clubs have got benevolent owners who, the higher you go up, are putting more and more money in. So the average amount of money that's being put in across the Super League owners is £1.5 million. That's a lot of money. You know, somebody at some point needs to say, that's fine, but you've asked me for that £1.5 million 5 seasons running. When am I actually going to get a return on that investment? And you're not, unless somebody comes in and buys you out, pays you some of that money back, but says in return for that, I'm telling you what the competition looks like. The other thing is those clubs may want that competition to look like that because it gives them opportunity. Like Wigan and Warrington earned more than just money out of playing in Las Vegas. The eyes on them, the awareness, the companies that they could speak to, they didn't do that within the realms of that was a Super League initiative or Rugby League commercial initiative. They arranged it. They're talking about taking a game to Dublin next year because they got so much attraction out of going to Las Vegas. They were absolutely staunch, particularly Chris Radlinski, in saying this will only succeed if other teams go next year. They're not saying we had a great time. We you know, we'll make it Warrington's home fixture next year, but we'll go again and we'll keep all the additional revenue. They're saying no, we've set that up so 2 other teams can go and they can work out how they can make money out. I think there's a genuine feeling for change that isn't just about preserving things as they are. I think if there is change to the level that we're now looking at, the game might look slightly different.
If only we were as a country, that is the United Kingdom, were as politically important as Papua New Guinea for Australia, then we could convince their government to give us loads of money. Because the soft power thing in sport is going to become... We've seen with Saudi Arabia, with golf, with professional wrestling, which is not sport, but you know what I mean, UFC, bringing all the big footballers over there. They've got the Club World Cup coming up. But now they're getting involved in boxing. With our friends at TKO, who are part of IMG, are part of TKO. And the traditional boxing promoters ain't going to like it because they've got unlimited... I don't know where all the money's from. They've got unlimited money. I don't understand it. I don't understand this geopolitical thing. But... at least you haven't. You know, they've not discovered us yet. So then we'll have to have really difficult conversations about sport washing.
But I think we will have to have those conversations because, again, we've said it on a number of occasions on this podcast. You're either global or local. Local, you're at a sort of semi-professional level, and you can't expect the big television bucks. You'll survive. Global, if Doha ring up and say it's £1 million for the World Club Challenge, that's where you go and play the World Club Challenge.
Elsewhere, I think before we get on to actual rugby, well, here is actual rugby. Abigail's happy because Rochdale are top of League One.
They are.
So they're top of League One.
Nilled another opponent
Yeah,
as
they've had
well.
a good start to the season.
Now we're in, because it's Challenge Cup week, so we all get to go, we enjoyed Super League, all those games on the telly, can't keep up with them. Now there's only 2 games to watch. The Brisbane Broncos, Phil, what was that all about? They're the world's best team now. Well, not quite, but getting there.
Well, with Michael Maguire as coach, playing an expansive brand of rugby.
That's not Wigan.
It's only one game.
And Sydney Roosters are rubbish, and
with
she
the
signed
oldest-
Jared Warrior-Hargreaves
The
again.
oldest half-back pairing as well.
Yeah. Is Nathan Cleary still the best rugby player in the world?
Yeah,
After a week,
has he
yeah.
come over here yet?
No, not yet, but that French fella's done his knee, hasn't he? So they can't talk about him for a while, so... Is that all? Is that the news? I think that is, isn't it? I don't think there's any...
Sally Lindsay resigned as well, but I don't know when that was, whether that was the week before, whether that was...
it was still after the last podcast.
There's been too many. But it was interesting reading her notes around... She's sort of referencing her quotes around united, being united, and that's what the sport needs to be. And I think it does need to be that way, but it seems to me that there's change in the air.
The problem with being united is that we never have been, because when we've been united for a certain amount of time, somebody gets upset with the fact that they haven't got the share that they want, so they break away. So you get Super League and the RFL, and that costs £5 million, and then we go through this long process of reuniting, and then now how long have we been reunited since Rugby League commercial? So we now want to break away again. So
it's like the reunification of the RFL and Barla, wasn't it? But Barla still exists actually. Maybe it goes back to 1895, doesn't it, as a sport, that it's sort of almost ingrained in the culture of the sport that, if you don't like something, you rip it up.
We fall out.
Yeah. It's like political parties. They want to be in power, but actually the sections who are very much of one part of the political party, they want to be in power, but under their terms. So but they'd rather see the other ones in charge, just so that if they can't do it,
you could understand if we were rolling in the kind of riches that the ARLC were, and we weren't quite happy with the distribution, and some people going to the table and saying, you've earned all this money because we've provided it at the top end of the game, so we want more of it. And you've seen plenty of occasions in sports administration where they're fighting over something. We're fighting over nothing. We don't.
There's fighting over a code.
I think it's one or the other, though, isn't it? It's a power grab in a rich organisation, or you flip it on its head, and it's the other way around, isn't it? That I think they're getting frustrated.
Yeah.
And you point to the Vegas thing where the clubs organise it themselves and say, "Well, hang on a minute, what's the governing body's purpose if we're doing this?"
Well, and also if it it was in January's 4020, so it must be true. If Simon Moran is the entrepreneur who has ensured that the test series comes over here rather than stays in Australia, that's an initiative that's come effectively from within the clubs.
You mentioned that before.
Have I mentioned that before?
Simon Moran getting involved more because he's an actual promoter of things. I think you mentioned getting some of his acts involved, haven't you? But it does seem a bit obvious to get an actual promoter of things to try and promote something.
Yeah. And
an event promoter.
And
he's one of the industry leading experts, isn't
as
he?
Peter Volandis said, and will be quoted in the new 4020, having said it out on Friday, along with a lot of other stuff, some of which you may never read elsewhere.
That's my column, Phil's talking
When
about.
Simon Moran rings you up, you listen.
I can't wait to see what's been cut out this month. I hope it's a bit about feet.
About what?
Feet. Did the feet bit make it in?
No,
I didn't think it would. I start writing and then...
It's a stream of consciousness.
It's like...
Suddenly there's feet and you go...
Yeah, when we go to do interviews...
That's fine.
One of these launch things, the first ones are always a bit... Because I'm not in the groove, but then you go...
The thing about editing is you want to edit back rather than find reasons to put in.
Yeah.
But I did not buy a thing to do your nails on with feet. Which is disappointing, but there you go.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
No, you can
actually, I do, sadly.
Yeah, you can be united in mediocrity. Sometimes you need strong talkers with differing opinions to push things through. Do we have those in rugby league? Where's our Tony Benn? Where's our?
We do, but we don't have a unified vision of where we want the sport to go. Even within Super League, we don't have 12 people that are unified in what they want the sport to be.
Plus ça change.
None of our problems are new.
No. Well,
you can actually trace them back to the fact that About 6 years after the formation of the Northern Union, we had our first Super League, where the top clubs of the time broke away. It lasted 1 year.
Well, I mean, that's longer than some things in rugby league. The Silk Cup play, well, that was 1 season. Not the Northern Rail Cup, that lasted a bit longer. But when are we going to take games to Blackpool again? Can we go to Blackpool again? Bring back the Summer Bash. That was a great success. Is that all the news? Is that all the non-rugby things that have gone on this week? Because I know people
that we can talk about.
Yeah, I know people are signing people for next year, but who cares about that? It's like it's next year. Deary me. I'm sure I was going to say something else, but I've forgotten, and I'll remember at some point.
There's talk of a certain club not paying its players, but I'm not sure we get any benefit in talking about
No.
that.
All the coaching changes happened last week, because we spoke about them.
Yeah.
Paul Cook in Forty20 magazine this week.
Yeah, talking about why he took the Featherstone job.
Not talking about fate, so that's good.
And how disappointed he was that they lost yesterday.
To Sheffield, yeah. Hull FC 22, speaking of Paul Cook's former clubs, was he at League as well at some point? Was he on the coaching staff? Yeah. 22-22, after extra time. They could not be split because some dreadful drop goal attempts.
Or you could say some
great defence.
Excellent.
Great defence.
Yeah. I
great blocking.
I think, yeah, give Hull credit for that. And then I think we throw the floor open to the expert amongst us.
It was all the referees' fault. All of them. Referees, touch
Fantastic
judges.
game.
We're all video referee. This week.
22 all. So much to admire.
Just say you didn't watch it.
And all people were talking about was the performance of the ref.
If the referee hadn't done that, though, we wouldn't have had an exciting game.
I watched the second half, so I didn't watch the first. But in fact, I forgot it was on. I'll be honest. I was too busy working, and then I thought, oh yeah, rugby's on. So I caught the second half. I thought it was a great game. There's always going to be talking points. People will bemoan the referees, but actually, what it does, it gives people plenty of things to talk about. It creates column inches, and actually, if that's not, I know that people think that's a feeble excuse. Look, I'm not convinced that the first sin bin was a sin bin, but and there's the individual decisions. So I think people talk about the try in the corner at the end. I think it's right. You can debate the one in the captain's challenge around whether his foot was on the line or not. For me, I think it was on the line, but
on the line's over.
Ultimately, does it matter because it's not my opinion that I'm not making the decision? And I think one of the debates around captain's challenge, and we probably talked about pre-season, and I said it would create its own controversies, and it is doing. And there's challenge around the quality of the footage. Not every game has full complement of cameras. That one would have done, but even where you do, you're not always seeing the best footage. That said, I think we're only in round 3. Like with anything, it'll take a little bit of time for the referees to adjust. For me, I think there's probably a need to try and avoid, where we can, an inconclusive outcome. Sometimes there will literally be, you cannot see the ball down on the ground or something, for example, and you just can't have, there is no evidence. And for me, that one in the extra time, I think for the video referee just has to make a decision one way or the other, as opposed to coming back inconclusive. And I think there was one slightly earlier than that where it came back inconclusive. And again, I think a decision has to be made one way or another.
What about the time it takes to make a decision?
I think that's another factor. I think, again, the referees, the video referees, will need to look at that as a group. Can we be quicker? I think they probably can in instances where they're looking at... Some instances you need to look at multiple angles to get some footage that may or may not show you, because you can guarantee, and it's happened before, you look at an angle, you make a decision, and then sure as eggs is eggs, Sky will then show another angle that'll prove you the other way. We've all been there before, we've seen it. So you can't blame the referees for wanting to go through the process, and I think it is helpful to hear them. I suspect it's more frustrating if you're in the ground because you can't hear the video referee. And again, in the NRL, with Captain's Challenge, with video referee, you can hear them in the ground. And I think that will help. People can see the footage, you appreciate that. I think the frustration comes is where you keep looking at the same angle over and over because that's not changing.
Yeah.
And I think that's, when me having been sat in that seat, look, it's so much easier sat at home on my sofa than it is being in the hot seat making a decision. That's inevitable. But I think we've always talked as referees when I was in the group, where you keep looking at the same angle over and over, that does not help you as a decision maker. You've just got to make a decision and come down on one side of the fence or the other. So I think there are things that the referees can improve on in those areas. Will it eliminate all controversies? Absolutely not, and it never ever will do.
And should it?
Well, there'll always be
sport,
disagreements. There'll always be disagreements, and there are shades of grey and there are opinions. If for example that decision on the line, we have Hawkeye. We don't have Hawkeye, so someone's got to see the evidence and judge based on the evidence, and that's humans. So you're going to have judgment calls to make. So, it's never going to be a perfect system. That said, I think, again, some of the footage won't be as good, and the system is not as good as what they've got in the NRL. We don't have an NRL bunker that had multi-million pounds thrown at it.
So maybe that's what we can get the NRL to do, is buy us a bunker.
Well, they're buying us a bunker. They're putting money into the women's game.
Yeah. We've got to find some for the men as well, though. I mean, Gary the Viking has asked, as well as saying Salford should be deducted points. Should there be there should be a shot clock for the video. You should be put under pressure. We're going to put a clock on you. You've got 60 seconds. Here you go. Right, make your decision.
Well, I don't know. I don't think that helps. I think, there was, when I was watching some of the footage, there was, I don't know what the video refs are seeing. I've never actually been to Wilmslow to see it. But what I do know is that the quality of the image they get isn't sometimes as good as what we get at home. So they have to ask for the transmission to be able to see the angle in HD, which is not ideal. But what we could see on TV at times, I don't know if it was just the game I was watching, but you could see all the angles available on the screen at one point, which wasn't great. That might have just been a technical hitch. And I think, again, from a viewer's perspective, and I think we might have even mentioned it last week, the week before, this thing of when it goes to the video referee, having the referee in the corner.
Yeah.
I think...
Who can't do it?
I think
it's like us waiting for a decision.
Why do we need to see that?
I think, and this is only pure speculation, I've got no idea about the production process, but I think that's because, as you say, that when they had that multi-screen that wasn't supposed to be there and the angles, I think they don't want that on the full screen because it would look worse than if it's in that low.
Well, you don't need the multi-screen, you just need to see
just any of those angles that aren't. I think that's what it is, but that's pure speculation.
As we've had it in years gone by, you just have the one angle filling the screen that we're watching. If you want an inset, put an inset in the picture, but not to reduce the size of the image. So everybody watching at home, you're not seeing the full screen. I know that's a really minor point, but
and also that animation of the thing is it goes on too long. That needs to, especially because they haven't got the sponsor's logo on that bit. So but
again, the other thing I would say on shot clocks and things, shot clocks were brought in, and this was another thing. Again, I said about Captain's Challenge before the season kicked off that I think it has a lot of merit, but it flies against what the game is trying to do and speed the game up, keep the game flowing. With shot clocks that have been introduced over the last few years, green cards to try and stop people from staying down. All these things are designed to keep the game flowing, and Captain's Challenge flies in the face of that.
Well, so does the shot clock for dropouts. Because players are now actively looking at the clock and going,
Agreed.
I've got another 15 seconds, so I'm not going to drop out.
Yeah.
And goal kickers as well are doing it now. They're actually looking at the exact second where they can take as much time as possible before they
well, the reality is
and it slows the process down.
Again, clubs were at one stage being fined if they went over 1 minute 20 for a conversion, and then that stopped being applied. Well, there's an easy law change, easy way of changing it. You change the law, and the conversion has to be taken within a set period of time. If it's not, you lose the opportunity to kick it, and that's what they've got in rugby union. Why not introduce that? People like Sneed.
Can we get you on the laws committee?
You can't have a referee on a laws committee. I mean, that's just common sense.
Sky Sports have got me on the laws committee.
But someone like Sneed just takes forever.
Yeah, but even now with dropouts now, every club is looking at the shot clock, and if they're ready to drop out after 15 seconds, they're waiting until 29. Well, and it's only seconds.
I know, and it's taken
an impressionable thing.
When the shot clocker was introduced, as soon as the decision was made, drop out, we would then say all up, as in all the players were standing up, there was nobody laying down injured, and therefore we could put the shot clock on. There is now a delay before that's even started. So they won't start until the referee gets to the centre of the post. Well, actually, I've seen in some games that adds a good 10 seconds onto maybe, I can't even remember
Bloody
what it is
referee,
now,
get there
25-second dropout or something, and it suddenly becomes 35. So you're now seeing the ridiculous situation of players waiting for the dropout.
Yeah.
That's not what it's designed to do.
All of that said, Hull were fantastic. And I think if we're looking at the team that's impressed most in the first month of the season, you'd have to say it was Hull. I don't think many people, even outside of their new on and off field organisation, would have said we'll get 5 out of 8 points.
Because I've been on this programme saying they've just signed a lot of old people from Lee who are past it now, and
I
there
think
they are.
the biggest change I can see is attitude.
That defensive commitment against Lee, firstly when they were down to 11 men for a period, and then in Golden Point extra time where they did charge down, I think 3 drop goals.
Yeah.
That is something that has to lay at the door of John Cartwright. He has done something in the off season that I don't think many people thought possible. That he's brought together a very disparate group of people that are new to the club, never mind new to him, and he's turned them into what really wanting to work for each other. He's got the core of the young back three that were put through such turmoil last year where they had to play because they were running out of players, who now look really ready to play at that level. But he's putting people in front of them that can protect them and look after them and not expect them to do everything. And they've got a unity about them. Their goal line defence and the fact that they stayed in that game when every game last year they wouldn't have done.
They don't look like a team who are going to lose by 60 points one week and 70 the next.
Well, they've got 5 points already. They only got 6 last year. I thought their display was superb. I really did. And the credit is to him because, yes, whilst Herman Essa clearly is their go-to player, whilst Aidan Caesar is the general, and there's absolutely no doubt that probably he is the player of the month. I can't remember who the 6 nominees are, but I haven't seen anybody play consistently better than he has. And whilst ever he is on the field, and the issue at some of the other clubs he's been at is he hasn't been on the field all season. He does get injuries sometimes. Those two clearly are the standout, but it's everybody else. They're all playing their part. It's a remarkable story, and good luck to them.
But equally on that, Lee, because they lost some influential players.
Oh yeah,
It's a whole.
but I think Lee are now at a level. Lee are
because people doubted them last year, didn't they? Whether people could back up off the year before, and they did, and they've certainly started the year strong, haven't they?
undefeated, which is last year they had a load of injuries and the season didn't really start until sort of 14 games in, and they still made the playoffs. They've won a Challenge Cup. They are a team that are now comfortable at that end of the table playing at that
They're
level.
a top half team, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
So all of us that predicted they'd fall away this year, everyone on Sky.
Oh no!
We're only 4 games in, aren't we? So,
but I think
But there's a long way to go if they get injuries to key players, But they have had change in. John Asiata was a big player to depart.
And their recruitment is great because it seems to be that the players that they bring in, who maybe don't have as big a name to those outside, are exactly what they need. Liu is filling that Asiata role, but he's a younger player, so you don't feel as though they've missed him. And David Armstrong, everybody's talking about. He's an exciting player, isn't he? You'd think they were gonna they lost some speed at the back. Matt Moylan was a really big signing for them, big things expected. So he probably didn't play quite as much as they wanted him to, but even after a month, Armstrong looks as though he's a younger, fitter, faster, more exciting version of Moylan. So their recruitment's great.
The chant is now having a discussion about Eddie Hearn and Matchroom. Would they be any good for a Super League takeover, given the great things they've done with boxing and darts? He's going to be busy with this Saudi Arabian boxing thing. They're not getting into darts yet. That'll be coming soon. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Hearns. Paul, in reply to that, says getting the Hearn organisation in would result in a string of on-the-road games costing the club's money and adding expense to the supporters. Premier League, Super League rugby, I can call it. Has the game, asked Toby, got any leg to stand on going to Sky to complain about the quality of cameras? Cameras are shocking to what we saw compared with the NRL coverage and other sports, makes some decisions impossible. You would think all the cameras would be good enough, wouldn't you? I mean, I'm not an expert on broadcast cameras, barely an expert on this one in my laptop. But you'd think that all the TV companies would use better cameras than we're using to film stuff at home.
I don't know. I still struggle to find the rugby on TV. I missed the first 5 minutes of the Castleford game trying to find it.
In fairness, it wasn't on the usual channel, was it? Or was that the game that was on?
It was on a red button.
Yeah, but it wasn't on 412 because I kept pressing the red. They had boxing on, and I kept pressing the red button, and it wasn't going anywhere.
You've got to go down to the apps.
I know. It's terrible.
I don't think you did miss anything. To be honest.
No. Well, no, I did watch the first 5 minutes back, and I didn't miss anything.
Paul says, Phil may remember Colin Tyrer of Wigan kicking goals. You could go to the bar for a pint and not miss his conversion attempt.
Yes, we have had history of people that did take a very long time.
That's what I was going to remember. Speaking of history, that Roy Francis documentary on Radio Wales, it's only on the iPlayer for 5 weeks. So if you missed it last week, make sure you listen to it because it's really good. I mean, that's underselling how good it was. And then I got a surprise halfway through because Phil Kaplan turns up on it.
They'll get anybody on, won't they?
I know it's Radio Wales that's going on, but it needs a bigger audience. It should be on a
recorded in this very studio.
Studio?
Don't let lighting on magic.
Castleford 22, Salford 14. Oh.
Watched by
Thriller.
Our esteemed colleague.
It's a thriller.
Oh, did anything happen controversially in the first
No,
5
it was.
minutes? You had to watch it back again?
It was Vegas to Cas Vegas, wasn't it? No, it wasn't a great game. I didn't think. Obviously, from Castleford's point of view, they got a win which they needed, didn't they? They were probably a little bit more dominant than the scoreline was at half time, I suspect. Castleford. The truth was there probably wasn't too much between the teams. I don't know, Salford looked and played a little bit like the world's against them. And I still go back to how they started the season off in round one. They're paying the price, I think, for that. Like, there was no excuse, was there, on Friday night about players not being paid. There's probably still a lot of uncertainty around future, and I get that. I get that, but at some point you kind of... I think you've just got to, when you're in the dressing rooms, kind of just have the conversation. Look, we know what's kind of going on off the field, but tonight let's just actually focus on the 80 minutes because that's all we can control. I don't know. I don't know even who they play this week. They're in the cup, aren't they?
Bradford.
And well,
coming off that big defeat in Toulouse
at home.
At Salford, yeah. Which would help them, you'd think, but I don't know. I was surprised at the Bradford result in Toulouse, but that's a potential banana skin for Salford.
Can they switch it to Odsal for a bigger crowd and a bigger share of the game?
And a smaller pitch.
Yeah. Castleford, Papa New Castleford. Judah Rimbu scored a try. Everyone loves him on YouTube and Facebook because all the people watch the videos.
It looks like it's going to be a fan's favourite. I mean, he scored the try like he'd won the Challenge Cup or something when he cheered. No, it wasn't a bad game. I'm probably exaggerating.
It was a game. It was just a game.
I think I knew there was a game on the other side. I'd rather have watched, but because I was reviewing the Castleford game,
the game on the other side was absolutely superb. And that's, you could make that comparison because the Castleford game finished 10 minutes later. So you watch this, enthralling game of high intensity between Hull KR and St Helens, and you go, "Wow, that was brilliant!" Really. Oh, watch the last 10 minutes of Castleford and Salford. Are they playing the same sport?
Not quite as good, but it was still an important win for Castleford.
Yes.
Yeah.
Having wanted to postpone the game,
who now get a week off because they were knocked out of the cup, and that could benefit them as well.
So we'll see how. The interesting thing with the Salford situation is because we've seen teams in the past deducted points and gone and got in trouble with the RFL for breaking the salary cap by spending too much money. In effect, Salford have cheated by promising wages they couldn't afford. When clubs, I assume Castleford are spending the salary cap this season. We know Wakefield didn't in previous years because Michael Carter said it. Salford have reaped the rewards of that by getting to finals, and Castleford at the bottom, Wakefield got relegated. can I call them cheats? Can I say that's cheating?
Well, they've paid the players up until the last few weeks, haven't they? I suppose.
But the club's got no money. The club can't afford these players.
They've only paid them with advance payments from the RFL. Otherwise, they would have gone.
They've got a payday loan. RFL payday loans.
But did they overstretch themselves the year before and the year before that to the point where it broke because they were paying more than they could afford?
Quite probably.
Where's Ian Watson now? I'm assuming he's probably got a job in Rugby Union.
Did he go to American Rugby Union and then
American Rugby Union? Is that still going?
Yeah. Well,
they're trying to turn it into Rugby League, aren't they? Which because Rugby League doesn't exist in America because we know it keeps falling apart every 2 weeks. I haven't read a Steve Mascott story about that yet, so I'm sure something Utah will have fallen out with someone else. I don't know. But well done, Castleford. Enjoy the week off. Saints Hull KR. I thought Saints going into this game. I thought they played okay at Wakefield, but they weren't, great. But they played okay. They've got a chance here against Hull KR, who've also been ramping things up. Too many errors from St Helens. Too many errors. Not to take anything away from Hull KR because they played really well.
Don't talk about errors because there's a game coming up.
No,
It was an error-a-thon.
But Hull KR well deserving of the victory.
The first 30 minutes, the Hull KR defence was absolutely outstanding. I mean, it was outstanding throughout the game, but that first 30 minutes set the tone for the match. They were incredibly intense. They didn't give Saints a minute on the ball. They were incredibly well disciplined. The speed off the mark was superb. There's only one team who's won all 4 games, and you can see why. Because each game they've got slightly better, which is what you want at this time of the year. And that was, this is the first real test of the season. With a great respect to the fact that we just scraped through against Castleford. We had a Salford team that weren't, the full Salford team. Let's see how good we are at St Helens. They're good. They're very, very good. They were superb, and it was a great. It harked back a little bit to round 1 and Wigan and Lee. That for at least 50 minutes, that was real high intensity playoff style rugby league.
Can they win the grand final? Can they get to? Well, they got Oldham this week in the cup, so I don't want to say it's a chance for them to rest players because Oldham will, they've got a big budget, they've got a big squad, haven't they? But
not
lost to Barrow.
Yeah,
lost, and not the standard of Hull Kingston Rovers.
Only just drew with Batley the week before. I don't think you can say anything about can they win a grand final. That's like asking if Warrington can win a grand final. It's far too.
Well, no, they can't.
Oh, it's all right. It's not.
Kevin's already said it. It's all right.
It's not that early.
I'm only joking.
They can write teams off.
No,
Salford aren't going to win the grand final.
4 games in, and ultimately it comes down to a playoff system, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So
can they get to the playoffs? Yes.
Yeah. Well, they nearly lost to Castleford in round 1, and now look at the unbeaten top of the table.
Hull KR are the real deal. They've got sufficient strength in depth to be without somebody like Rhys Martin, who they'd signed for a purpose. He's now unfortunately going to be out for 4 months. They don't look like they missed anything. They missed something, obviously, because he's a very good player. Yeah. They lost Niall Evans, to concussion. They moved it around, brought Jack Broadbent in at fullback.
I saw a little bit of that, or maybe in a half time or something. He played well, Jack Broadbent.
He was really good.
Yeah.
And they didn't have, the week before, Lewis and May. This week they had Lewis and May. It's like they've got cover to play whichever way they want to play. But they're tough. They're really, really tough. Michael McAloran perhaps is there just for a year to bring Bill Leyland through and to take some of the pressure off Jez Litton. But in those opening stages, to have somebody like him in the middle of the field, you can see exactly why they bought him. He's doing exactly the job that they bought him for.
As Kevin says, can Hull KR by the end of the season get up to Wigan's level? Because I can't see anyone else matching Wigan. That is a very good question, Kevin.
They weren't a million miles away in the grand final last year. They just hadn't played in a game of that intensity on that stage. The fact that they now have, I wouldn't rule them out. I think the interesting thing is the Challenge Cup coming in now, because literally you win 4 games and you've won a trophy, and I think certainly if Hull KR were to have a really good run in the Challenge Cup, that sets them up for maybe a challenge at a later. The question mark over Warrington will now be, can they ever do it in a big game? Because they didn't do it in the cup final, they didn't do it in the semi-final last year, they didn't do it in Vegas.
Did do it against Wakefield in the Darryl Powell testimonial.
But that question isn't being asked about Hull KR, because even though they haven't done it yet, they're moving closer to looking like they could do it.
Yeah. The pressure on Paul Wellens, I don't even know if it's real pressure or just people are entitled to win everything because Saints won everything for a while. But they haven't been playing bad before Friday, had they? Necessarily? No,
and they didn't play badly on Friday. They were beaten by a better team. Alex Walmsley was back to his marauding
He was the best player on the pitch for Saints, wasn't he? Which is great and also a concern because he's not going to be around forever.
So there's some real positives. I think Harry Robertson is a fantastic talent. Really, really exciting. Jack Wellesby, more often than not, is the kind of bloke you want to go and watch because you know he's going to do something pretty much exceptional. Tristan Saylor's new, but he could be anything. So I don't think there's any reason to...
That just reminded me of seeing something I think it was on Twitter or something, where it said, I think it was Tristan Saylor, I think, said if you get by Bevan French from Temu, is it?
Oh, that's a bit harsh.
I thought, well, that is harsh.
That's harsh.
I mean, I've not seen much of St Helens, but I think it was a round one a game I watched, and I thought it was outstanding.
Was that when he flicked the ball off his...
That was against Cass.
Back heel
Oh,
the ball,
that was Cass, yeah.
And then we were told that
That's illegal.
Shouldn't have done it.
You're not allowed to do that.
Yeah. I don't know what it is about St Helens. Is it because it's a rugby league town that it's this sort of...
Is it like the whole goldfish bowl?
No, I think it's also to do with the fact that it hurts more when the team that are dominant are the ones from over the Billinge Hill.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know.
I think Hull have suffered from that a little bit in the last couple of years. That as the rise of Hull KR has made the plight of Hull seem much worse than it is, because you've got to go to finals and watch your neighbours be in it, and you don't want that. And I think that Saints were dominant for 4 years. Yes, that breeds a certain level of
Well, let's have it right. I mean, I think it was only last week I'd said it, but I think you're almost dark horses in a way, and they've just played Hull KR.
It could still be
the grand finalists.
Exactly.
The playoff system. They told me earlier if they get to the
I think
playoffs,
there's a big game for them this week because we're in
Leeds, isn't it?
Saints League.
But
it's on the Sportsman. Well done, the
I think,
Sportsman.
they need to prove to that they've got what 5 days turnaround to prove to their home fans that they are still the real deal.
Surely they can't be knocked out of the cup by Leeds.
You wouldn't have thought.
You can't. I mean, they can't. I watched the first half and then I had to go out on Saturday, which is a shame because I missed apparently one of the worst games in Super League history. There are good 0-0s and bad 0-0s, and unfortunately Catalan spoiled that just before half time. But this was two not very good teams at the and I don't know why, because Leeds are Leeds now the inconsistent team. They can't find that consistency. They haven't got whatever it is. Ryan Hall wasn't fit, so I don't know.
I think the conditions, I'm told, on the ground were worse than they appeared on the television for both teams. So that's the slight excuse for
Bradford lost
some of the handling errors. Both teams were woeful in keeping hold of the ball. If the game is 50% attack and 50% defence, Leeds probably scored 45% on defence and 5% on attack. No. There were 2 tries, both of which came from Leeds errors. Leeds had a try disallowed on one that was Jake Connor. All he had to do was catch the ball and fall over the line. It could have been 11-0 the other way. It just wasn't a great game.
That's all.
I didn't see any of it, so that I feel relieved.
But Steve McNamara's...
I saw all of it, and I wish I hadn't.
It's a good week for Steve McNamara because
he needed it. He needed it.
And they've got Fev in the cup this week.
Yes, Fev flying out.
Yeah, which I think they're showing it in their clubhouse. I don't think they're charging as much as Saints are for fans to go watch.
I think they played in the cup before, actually, at Featherstone at Catalan, I seem to remember.
Yeah.
They played in the middle eights at one stage.
They may have done.
Oh, they will do, won't they? Toulouse 36, Bradford 4. That was not necessarily a surprise in terms of the result, but the width of margin.
Yeah. A very disappointed Brian Noble from his cafe in Toulouse.
Was he holding court in the cafe in Toulouse or just talking to you for the magazine?
That just reminds me of that. That's a fantastic steak restaurant in Toulouse if you go, and I'm sure most people have been. I'm trying to remember what it's called.
Near the ground or in
it's in the city centre, and they only sell one dish, and that's steak and chips.
So vegans.
That's no good.
Walk on.
It's fantastic. It's just a set menu. It's just I can't remember what the starter is now, but it's basically steak and chips, and they're bringing more chips. So definitely go if it's the one that everybody queues outside of. So.
Right.
Like the Harry Ramsdens of
Sit there for Featherstone fans if you're watching.
But they're in Catalan.
Oh yeah, there's
But
Toulouse.
later in the
Go
season,
via
later
Toulouse.
It's
in
a
the
chain
season.
actually, but they don't have one in Perpignan.
No, that's not good, is it? On Sunday, Wigan beat Huddersfield 44-18, proving there was no hangover from going to... hangover's probably the wrong word when we come to Warrington. But
Although Huddersfield were winning at half time.
Yeah.
I know, yeah, and they scored 38 unanswered points in the second half or something.
And that's what really upset the fact that Luke Robinson, again, will have gained a lot and learnt a lot about his team in the first half and thought, finally, some of the things that we want to put into practice, we're getting the right sort of personnel out there to be able to play the way we want to play. Right, lads, go and replicate that again in the second half. 38 unanswered points.
Who would be a coach?
Wigan are a machine, aren't they?
So how do we put a spanner and break it? How do we break Wigan?
Well, Wigan nearly broke themselves last year when French and Field had about, what was it, 4 or 5 weeks where they couldn't play, and they looked human. It's a long season.
I mean, that's a good thing about Hull KR now. They've got both their halfbacks back because we thought, well, will Michael Lewis be out for a while? No, that turns out no.
So yeah, hats off to Wigan for a method of play that meant in the second half they were absolutely dominant. And you've got to be 100% concentrating, or Field or French or Marshall will burn you. Somebody was saying that I was watching, obviously, the Wakefield Warrington game, which is far more interesting game. And keeping up with someone who was at Wigan, and they were saying that Wigan did look leggy in the first half. So again, to be able to turn that round, it's...
Yeah, because you expect it to kind of kick in as the game goes on, when you got to start and then suddenly you become better.
But I didn't see any of the highlights. I know Tuilola here was taken ill before the game, right? Yeah, and there's some concern over what it might be and how it happened and what it is. You'd hope that Huddersfield get him back, very quickly as well, because he's important.
We're not rugby league experts like Willie Mason, formerly of Hull KR, for about 2 games.
Yeah.
And Justin Horrow, the hybrid, formerly of Wakefield, but they've got a podcast in Australia because everyone's got a podcast. And they were questioning, would Julian Sember, would he be any good in the NRL? Big bugger. He'd be all right. He can handle himself.
Oh, yes.
He can handle himself. Did you not see him the other week?
I think the other thing about Julian Sember is that every time I see him interviewed, and he was on TalkSport last week, so they have a slot now every Thursday about 1:30. If you want to listen in, they have a Super League star talking to presenters who appreciate rugby league but aren't experts in rugby league. He came over absolutely brilliant. The week before it was Alex Walmsley. December is the star that we should be building everything around.
They've sent Paul Hawkesby a Saints shirt. He's number 1 in their squad now. Warrington 16, Wakefield 30. Let me say something about Warrington first of all. How stupid do you have to be? And I know this is... I don't know any of the facts, so I'll just go straight in on this one. So your men are playing at 1 o'clock at the Halliwell Jones Stadium, right? Fine. Right. Don't know why they're kicking off. Do we know why they kicked off at 1 yesterday?
Or why both games
Yeah,
kicked off
just...
at 1. I don't know why one didn't kick
What
off
if
at
it was
3.
a Sky issue with how many feeds they had? I don't know.
Might be.
Don't know what. Maybe the netball was in the way, or tennis. I don't know. Your women's team are playing a pre-season friendly on Sunday at 1 o'clock across the town, so no one's going to go watch it. Why do you play both games at the stadium? Not at the same time. I mean, that would have been quite confusing. And I probably would have backed Saints women against Warrington as well. But that doesn't make any sense. They've got loads of change rooms at the Halliwell Jones. You could have one game before or one game after.
We've had dual internationals there, haven't we?
Yeah.
Men's and women.
Women's cup final and Shield. Seems to remember.
And it's their own ground. It's not like it's a council
So-
ground or whatever.
So that seems to be a really strange idea, that if we're all behind women's, because remember last week we're all behind women's rugby now. It's very important because we've been embarrassed on the world stage, so it's important that we all back women's rugby, and then the first chance we get at a club and they show it off to the park. Didn't make any sense. And they lost 16-0 to Saints. So who had the shorter retirement, Faye Gaskin or Ben Thaler? That's the big question. I wasted my breath saying to Faye Gaskin after the grand final, good luck with your retirement, and then she's back. Warrington's men lost 30 points to 16 to Wakefield in the Darrell Powell testimonial match. He seemed very happy after the game.
First time back
I was
at
gonna
Warrington.
Yeah.
I thought it was the first time for everything. It's not very often you see Daryl Powell happy, is it?
Oh, that's a bit harsh. I might see him before you do. But I mean, I couldn't watch the game, so I was working.
Was he moaning about the referee this week like he did last week?
Probably will, won't he?
Yeah.
Probably.
No.
Come on.
That's a surprise.
they
They won, didn't they? Yeah, that's a surprise.
Oh, it's great, Marcus Griffiths. Love him. Better than that James Child.
Yeah.
30 points to 16.
Well, Wakefield never win apparently with me, did they?
Exactly, no.
Forget that they won at St Helens, don't they?
With the penalty
With
try.
a penalty
yeah,
try,
yeah.
yeah.
Commentated on that one. I should dig that out of the archive, see if I say anything nice about you. 30 points.
Probably not.
Oh, no. I was a fair commentator. Some people still want me to work for them. 30 points to 16, Wakefield win. So let's forget, Wakefield. They're rubbish team. So you shouldn't be going to Warrington and winning. Warrington, all their players are injured. Forget the players that are injured at Wakefield. We're not allowed to talk about those. Not been a good fortnight for Warrington, has it? We'll give the praise to Wakefield in a bit, but it's not been a good fortnight for Warrington. Losing Las Vegas heavily to Wigan. Right, Wigan are the champions. Shouldn't be losing by 14 points at home to the team promoted last year.
I think that is to dismiss the way that Wakefield played, and I think their ability to move the ball from anywhere on the pitch, which is a trademark of Daryl's in the way he likes to play. The fact that they've got Mike McMeekin up front, who is as destructive a forward at the moment as any playing in Super League. Liam Hood probably didn't get the praise he deserved. I thought he was absolutely outstanding. And they've got strike, Ollie Pratt, Matt Russell back at Warrington, Tom Johnstone.
He's not had a good season so far, apparently. So
has he not?
No.
He was great.
Some Wakefield fans are thinking, wasting their money on
Max
this
Jowett, again.
They had a bad game against St Helens, did the back three, and this week they bounced back.
I think the thing about that is that we probably mentioned it last week, that a promoted team isn't used to the level of intensity that they have to play in Super League. So no matter how good you are, when your first two games have been an emotional arrival back into Super League, your first home game against Hull KR, who turned out are actually pretty good, and you ran them very close. It's very hard then to get up for your third game. Doesn't matter whether it's against St Helens or not. It's just that week in, week out, it doesn't get any less. You've got to be, the Championship. They were so dominant with the squad that they had. They maybe could have said, it's X this week. We can rest a few players. Let's try a few moves. You can't do that in Super League. I think they got back to doing what they loved doing. It was a nice sunny afternoon. It was a dry track. They decided they were going to go round Warrington rather than necessarily through them. Warrington couldn't cope with that. I thought it was a perfect game plan, brilliantly executed, and clearly it meant something to Daryl. Now, whether he said to his players,
"Come on, lads,
I wouldn't mind if there's one game you're going to win this season, if it's this one," and whether that would have had any impact. But I just think when the going got tough, Warrington didn't.
I don't know if this is a fair thing to say, but because it was mentioned that Daryl Powell's last game in charge of Warrington was at Wakefield, and in that season where Wakefield were relegated, that was one of the worst of all the teams that Wakefield played, and Wakefield were obviously dreadful because they got relegated. Warrington were worse in that game than Wakefield at any point in that season. And it seems that from listening to Daryl Powell after the game, Wakefield's players might have... I think he mentioned Liam Hood played really well against him last time and got him the sack. The players are obviously buying into what he wants them at Wakefield, and they perhaps didn't after a while at Warrington. So we forget they started well.
Yeah, I think the Wakefield team are eager to test themselves at this level. I think some of the Warrington players he came up against when he wanted to change things were a little bit set in their ways and perhaps weren't as receptive. Yeah. And he tried to do it too quickly. I think by his own admission, when he looks back, he'll go, it's the Brian Clough thing, throw your medals in the bin, you're not as good as you think you are. And that's fine if you've got two teams to choose from and you can decide that you're not going to use those players because you didn't think that they were the kind of players you wanted. No, you've got to use those players because it's a salary cap squad system and they've got the top squad number. So I think he would learn from that experience. But by the same token, I think a lot of what he can do and what he enjoys doing is done at clubs like Castleford and Wakefield, where he can be the king. He can determine exactly the way he wants them to play. At Warrington it's slightly more difficult because there's that huge weight of expectation. that's lasted 70 years. It's going to affect every coach that goes there. It's different. They've lost 2 games. It's like it's not fatal. They're not playing well at the moment. They had some of their star names out.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? That they, even when they won, beat Catalan
They've not
at
played
home
well
and
this year.
Huddersfield away.
They've not played
well yet.
well. But it's forward. There's a big game for them this week in the cup because they go to Widnes.
Yeah, I'm watching that.
And obviously that is more than just a Super League team against a Championship team. It's a local derby. They haven't played each other for a long time. There's a little bit of some feeling there. The Battle of Cheshire.
Too posh for rugby league, but isn't it?
It's a big test for Warrington.
George Williams needs some help, doesn't he? He's not a knock on Ollie Leyland. He's a young player in
not at all.
coming into.
Well, and it was Stefan Ratchford this week, but they haven't recruited. They bought in Dan Russell. They lost more than they gained over the close season. Now that's either a vote of confidence in what they had, or perhaps they did need to go in the market. Maybe that's why they were after Mark Sneyd.
If you want to hear a more damning verdict on Warrington squad, listen to the last What Would Brian Bevan Say, because that was a damning discussion on the Warrington squad and the size of it. Kevin says Hud played well, but basically just walked under the sticks for one of his tries. Some really bad defence. Wire never seemed to play well against Wakefield. It was like Warrington had an excuse because it was the week after Vegas and took it. Wire have gone backwards. Thomas says, Wire are really poor, but Wakefield played so much better. Can't believe Wire fell for the short dropout so often. The teams haven't worked this out yet, apart from St Helens, because Paul Whelan said after the game at Wakefield, they're not going to do it unless they feel like they need to. But so many teams are going for this short dropout and no, it's not going off for them.
So Rowan Smith was ahead of his time.
What, in terms of getting it wrong? Or
he knew it was the right thing to do.
But they haven't changed the laws at that point.
I think the other thing as well is some teams are really good at captain's challenges in when to do them. Other teams are doing them so early in a game that when they lose them, you know there's going to be another incident where they wish they still had it. And I think you'd put Warrington in that category at the moment.
Leeds go after about 8 minutes or so.
Two and a half minutes.
2.5
well,
minutes.
it probably
It
felt like an hour and a half. Again, it looked like one that was so blatantly not worth challenging and so early in the game. They just shouldn't have done it.
It's that balance, isn't it, I suppose, if you're absolutely adamant that you've got it right. But it's been funny when it's happened to a captain, the incident.
Yeah.
And there was I think it was the Leeds Castleford game.
Ash Handley.
I think it was the Castleford player. I think that he was accused of knocking on or something, and it wasn't a knock on, so he challenged it. And I thought, he's not having to put his trust in another one of his players to work out whether he's actually.
It was a captain's challenge.
So that was Super League this week.
Which I still think is after
a great
1 month.
Great.
It's been a good start to the
3 golden point games.
Yeah.
Crowd seems to be up and everything.
Real intensity in some of the matches, and overall, there's been a couple of bludgers in there. I think we've had a really good start to the season.
Andrew says the Championship and League One are so competitive this year. Even the mighty Dewsbury Rams could be giving a few clubs a run for their money in 2025. Hopefully,
you'll be able to see in the new Forty20 our new League One columnist, and obviously there are some predictions of where teams are going to finish. They haven't been made by the columnist; they've been made by the editorial team. So
the shadowy cabal that runs Forty20 magazine.
Yes, my 2 cats. One of whom did think he was writing this issue.
Fairness, put them on TV and, it might be better than some pundits. In the Championship, Batley beat Widnes 28-20. We said Widnes are going great guns and then they lose at Batley.
With 2 late tries.
In a game that kicked off early due to floodlights. So, well done to Batley.
But Widnes were ahead for most of that game.
As you said...
was it Brad Martin that Batley just taken on loan and he got the 2 late tries? Or was it certainly got one of them was involved in the other? You
mentioned earlier... Barrow beating Oldham 20 points to 6. Featherstone 12, Sheffield 19 in the Mark Aston derby.
Yeah,
Craig Lingard
first win of the season for Sheffield. A really good performance.
Hunslet 10, Doncaster 38.
See, Featherstone have signed Ryan Hampshire.
Yes, I know, and still some Wakefield fans saying, wish we'd kept him.
But he isn't fit yet. Still coming back from broken arm.
Wish we'd kept him. Hunslet 10, Doncaster 38. Doncaster perhaps getting a Hunslet perhaps getting a taste of how tough the championship will be at times. Not that they're going to be dreadful or anything, but Doncaster are a well-drilled team, aren't they? So
a lot of star names.
And Halifax bouncing back from their defeat the week before in the 1895 Cup by winning 18-10 at York, who seem to be having a bit of a drop-off at the minute.
It's just an astonishing story, Halifax, because all pre-season we were talking about were they even going to make it to the starting line. Why on earth have they appointed a rookie coach in Kyle Eastman? It's going to be a really tough year for them. They just need to consolidate and measure top of the league unbeaten.
Yeah. And they were praising George Whitby on Jill Redsham.
He's a great young player.
In League One, Rochdale 68, Cornwall 0. So Cornwall's first game of the season ends in defeat. Although I did see our friend Abigail say she felt a bit sorry for Cornwall at the end. So, Hurricanes 16, Workington 16. For some reason I thought Midlands had won, but I got lost and missed the score. But that's a good. I'd say that's a good point for them.
Yeah.
Gull 16, Dewsbury 22. That sounds like a good, entertaining game for the good people at the Victoria Beckham Pleasure Gardens. And a good win for Dewsbury, obviously.
I think it shows that Gull are going to be competitive.
Yeah, they will be. Yeah.
Whitehaven 20, Keighley 4. Not good for the Cougars. I assume they've had lots of CVs from around the world for their job.
Ian Watson was a name. We mentioned that last week. Who's available? I thought Ian Watson's available. I forgot about him.
Ian Watson, James Ford. 5 coaches who could be in charge of... One of the worst things about journalism these days is all these terrible clickbait articles. But what actually they do that which is useful is those... When is this game on TV? Because every single Facebook group in rugby league is full of people saying, where is match on TV? Where is match? Where is TV? People are bloody thick. Newcastle 6, Swinton 48. So a good win for Martin Calner. So that's good for him. I can see there's some more comments coming through. Start of season with some highs, really good games, close games and lows. Salford, says Kevin. Can it all be down to losing Nicholson and Bateman, considering we were a bad referee decision for reaching the grand final last year? Were they? I can't remember that.
Are they... Warrington? This is Warrington.
Yeah. This is Warrington.
Whether it was a try or not, wasn't it? The live call.
I mean, if Dal Powell had been in charge, he would have blamed the ref, but slamming Sam's...
I think they also lost players like Gil Dudson, who added some size. Joe Bullock. So I just don't think they're as physically intimidating as they were last year.
To some extent, Warrington over what's the word? They exceeded expectations last year, perhaps in some ways.
There's a pressure on Sam as well.
The Burgess effect.
Obviously, their improved form in his first year. They're right. Oh, well, we'll go to the next level. Yeah, it's not quite as easy as that. No.
Here's some Oldham news from Richard. I didn't see the team yesterday, but he says that not sure what Oldham were thinking, playing without Drinkwater, Dudson, Ashurst, Craven, Milner, Thornley, Turner, and Agoro. Be interested to see if they play against Hull KR. That's interesting. That's a lot of that's a lot of cap they're not playing.
What cap? They don't have a cap, do they?
Well,
I don't know, do they?
I think they've got the same as Super League,
yeah,
so it just doesn't apply.
When Toronto came in, didn't they say, yeah, just spend whatever you want, but as long as it's under whatever.
I think it's safe to say that Wakefield were spending last year, weren't they? Because they were putting together a Super League team.
Yeah. Well, that's Super Matt Ellis. Did you see him behind Dal Powell on the telly?
I did.
Matt, if you're watching this programme, Matt, I mean, we love you because you've brought success to Wakefield and trophies and everything. Don't be that owner. Don't be that owner.
Are there other owners that get involved with their team?
At least I think he's only got one suit, but at least it's blue and not leopard print. Although, fully in favour of if the club want to bring out some suits in Wakefield colours with like the lapels in red or blue, that'd be great.
I thought the Wakefield kit was stunning.
It's great, isn't it? It's a nice one. Coming tomorrow on the Twitter, if it's fake, Elon's broken that, hasn't he?
Oh, is it back? It went down, didn't it, during today? All those exclusives coming out from certain journalists, you couldn't read them.
And when the games are on telly. There's only 2 on telly this week. I don't know how they're going to fill the pages.
I resorted to Rugby League on whatever it is on TV thing. I just had on the red button. I thought, I still can't find it.
Coming up on one of tomorrow's programmes I'm posting, it's St Helens versus Huddersfield in the 1970s. They've got a caption competition, and this is an idea for their current media manager. If you get the best caption, you win a club tie. What a prize. What a prize.
That's what we want.
Yes, James, you're probably right. We did overachieve last year and can't match it this year, says Kevin. Kevin also says, it feels like the players aren't up for it. Bought into it like this time last year. God knows why. It's just Warrington, in it. It is just Warrington.
Oh, don't be just so despondent.
It's just Warrington.
There was always going to be a bit of a hangover
it's
from Vegas,
so
I think.
It's
So
so early.
Kev, you're the world darts champion. Shouldn't have renamed the stadium. Wakefield can only beat teams in blue and yellow as well this season as well. That's the other.
Oh, it will be
Who
Warrington in
Darren Powell
crisis.
used to coach.
Yeah.
It will be Warrington in crisis if they lose to Widnes.
Well, it's Leeds in crisis again. Leeds United
We
lost
might
as well,
take a little different perspective on it, but at the moment,
I doubt it. I'd be surprised if they can't beat Widnes in the cup.
So what have we got then this weekend? In the Challenge Cup on Friday night, on the Sportsman, it is St Helens versus Leeds.
Oh, is that on the Sportsman?
It's on the Sportsman,
8
yes.
o'clock.
It's on YouTube. You know. Can you work YouTube?
Just about.
But-
I won't be watching it. Oh no, I will actually. I think.
Which game do you say you did?
In fact, I
Widnes
was
Warrington?
planning to go to the pub, believe it or not drink, but go and watch it. So maybe it won't be on then.
Well,
if
if
it's
they
on the
can get
Sportsman.
YouTube on,
Yeah.
on the tellies, God, be aware of that.
is it a rugby league pub?
A sports pub, yeah.
I'm going to Mallorca in May, and I'm expecting to watch the Magic Weekend in Magaluf. So you know, if I can't watch Wakefield and Cass in Magaluf, what's the point? Also on Friday, Salford versus Bradford,
Intriguing.
and Hull KR versus Oldham. Intriguing.
I don't know.
Not bad.
I think Oldham know that they're not going to Wembley this year, so
Do we think they picked the right game, the Sportsman? Salford, St Helens Leeds. I think the two picks are really dull.
I think Widnes Warrington would have always been a good pick
I think Wigan Hull.
because they haven't played each other for quite a while, and there is a bit of feeling there.
Wigan Hull's a dreadful pick. It's a really boring pick. I know Hull are better now, but I'm expecting Wigan to win by 20
They did
points.
play each other in round 2.
That's why that's why I just assumed that they were both on the BBC, because I would have thought if you were going to pick
round,
you'd have picked Saints Leeds over, I think, Wigan Hull, would you not? But maybe it's because of the holders.
but it's only on the red button as well. So
Yeah,
it's not as if it's
it's
not
not
as if
full-
it's not as if it's the FA
It's
Cup
not bells
where
and whistles.
if Man United play round A Park 11, they'll stick it on telly because it's Man United. It's on the red button, so it doesn't
They're
matter.
good.
Are they good?
Park
They're better than Leeds United this weekend. Dear me, they were terrible. Widnes Warrington and Catalan's Fev on Saturday. Well, there must be a feed of Catalan's Fev because I say Feverson are showing it in the clubhouse. So maybe it's just like the media manager with a phone.
Keep cover it, but normally it's geo blocked. So unless they've
I mean,
got
I did watch Toulouse Bradford instead of Catalan's Leeds. And on Sunday, it's the big one, Huddersfield Wakefield. I mean, I wouldn't have put that on TV because that'll be awful. And I've set this up, haven't I? Wakefield are going to lose.
Has there
to
ever been a
Huddersfield.
good Huddersfield Wakefield fixture?
No, never, never. Going back to the 0-0 in the '68 Challenge Cup semi-final, which if only Huddersfield have won 1-0 would have been much better than what happened following. And Lee Batley, I mean that's
Turning the clock back a bit.
a
Isn't
repeat
it?
of the 1998 Transpennine Cup final, as they're all calling it. That's on Sunday as well. Everyone's calling it that. Have we got to 7:20? Nothing's happened this week.
There is one final thing.
Yes.
The sad passing of Bob Pickles. For those that didn't know him, he was the chief scout at Leeds from the Doug Lawton days. He is responsible for finding virtually all of the talent that became the golden generation. He was the guy that believed in Rob Burrow, saw his talent and not his size. Immensely respected it in the game, as you can see by some of the tributes that have come in this afternoon. In fact, he was trending on Twitter.
That's all that,
Which he would find bizarre because he wouldn't have known what Twitter was. A lovely man, incredibly knowledgeable,
He was a nice man.
very, very good at his job. It's a special skill to go and look at some school kids and go, he's the one that we need to sign. Knew so much about the game. If you were lucky enough to get into conversation with him about the merits or otherwise of players, it just took it to a different level. Just a genuinely lovely man who was respected and admired by every club because the job he did at Leeds brought them that generation of success. So yes, the coaches take a huge part. Yes, the players themselves have to have the talent, but part of the oil in that machine is finding the components that go together, and not only did he do that, but a really genuinely lovely man. I know we say it a lot about people when they pass away.
No, he was, because when you mentioned his
was.
name, it didn't ring a bell. But when I looked on Twitter and saw a picture, I thought, right, okay, now I know who it is. And he was a genuinely nice guy. He was.
And he spoke really well about Rob on the telly last year, didn't
Yes.
he? On that tribute night. So yeah. People can go back and watch that clip where
Yeah.
he's talking about finding Rob Burnhold, the great golden generation.
I think he was an exceptional spotter of talent, but more than anything, I think people related to him because when he went to see parents and when he went to see coaches of amateur clubs, the way he spoke and what he said made them stop and listen and believe. So I think people like Kevin Sinfield and Danny Maguire would be really, really, sad tonight.
Ronnie the Rhino was at the netball on Saturday. I know
Did he not go to France?
He might have. Well, no, if he was, that's different questions, doesn't it?
I don't think he was.
He invaded the netball commentary box because Leeds Rhinos got to the final of the thing that they were playing, but they lost. So Ronnie gets everywhere.
In fact, he gets here in a minute to wave goodbye.
Well, he does. I thought, can't really end on. He's a tribute to someone, and now he's Ronnie the Rhino. But
Nice segue.
That was a segue. There he is. We're back next week. Yeah, it's Monday. Yeah, Ronnie's just going to go on forever. We'll see you next week. Thanks for all your comments and for listening. Don't forget we're on Spotify as well now. So if you have a Spotify account, just add us on there, and you don't have to listen to it. You know what I mean. Just